Thank you, our viewers, for joining us this late night evening. And it's an Easter weekend. We believe you're enjoying yourselves, and this is going to be a tremendous night and a great Sunday tomorrow, Easter Sunday. And so, before we get into this particular festive season, I feel that there's a tremendous need to discuss an issue concerning intellectual property, again, about the business environment, particularly regarding sports industry. So before we get into this discussion, let me have this introduction, then we'll come back right into the studio discussion.
The sports industry world over has been grappling with the challenges posed by counterfeit and unauthorized goods for many years, and the increasing global popularity of competitions, such as the English Premier League, makes this market an obvious and lucrative target. During the 2016-2017 season, more than 170,000 counterfeit brands, worth approximately 2.4 million British pounds, were seized on behalf of the English Premier League. The sale and distribution of counterfeit goods can have wide-reaching implications for brand owners and other stakeholders, including loss of revenue from official merchandise, reputational damage caused by inferior and dangerous products, and the dilution of a brand's ability to guarantee origin. The scale of the problem has been exacerbated by the growth in unauthorized sales via online marketplaces, with counterfeiters no longer confined to selling on street corners near sports stadiums. These online ecosystems provide a perfect breeding ground for counterfeiters, enabling products to be listed quickly, cheaply, and with minimal checks. According to Ugandan National Bureau of Standards, UNBS, 54% of the products on the market are either fake or counterfeits, and lots of these, sadly, are locally made. Tens of thousands of brands have been impacted not only through theft of sales and dilution of hard-fought reputations, but also through consumer confusion. These counterfeits cut across sectors and pose serious health and safety risks. The people are generally unable to distinguish between authentic, falsified, and counterfeit products, and anyone can buy a fake version of everyday goods. This trend inhibits Uganda's economic growth, since potential investors differ from doing business in a nation where they believe that their products will be widely forged. In resonance to the loud voices and stern efforts being undertaken across this country to fight the vice, the Uganda Registration Services Bureau (URSB), in conjunction with NTV, bring to you a discussion on how to specifically fight and defeat the counterfeit surge that is rife in the sports industry and market of Uganda. You're welcome.
Once again, I'm Karagaba Baldwins, and we're coming to you from the Serena International Conference Center, discussing this particular critical issue that is eating up our business environment. And for participation in this very discussion, please go on our social media handles on Facebook and Twitter, and then just have a concurrent discussion with us as we are here in the studio. And straight away, I have a prolific panel of intellectual property experts, both lawyers and I think very familiar to you, our audience, because they've been here quite often times. At the extreme end, I have Fred Muwema, the Director, Legal and Corporate Affairs, Anti-Corruption Network.
Counterfeit.
Anti-Counterfeit Network.
Yes.
Apologies on that. And the former Legal Director, FUFA, former Public Relations Director.
President.
Of Sports Club Fila.
Yes.
I think I got your profile description pretty faulty, but no worries. The good thing, you're not a strange figure to the public. You're welcome, Fred.
Thank you. I need to add also that I'm a consumer. I'm not just a lawyer. I'm a consumer of products and somebody who is affected by counterfeits.
Hopefully you're a sportsman.
Very much.
Mercy. Mercy, Kainobwisho. Is that right?
Yes, you got it right for the first time.
Director, Intellectual Property, URSB. Mercy, nice to see you again.
Nice to see you, Baldwin.
Yes.
Good evening, viewers.
So there is an element of theme coherence internationally about intellectual property aspects, which we'll talk about, Mercy, but let me start with Fred. So just help us to understand how the sports industry in Uganda is structured, and whether we have a sports merchandise market regulation in existence, because if we're discussing about sports intellectual property rights, we would need to know that.
Okay, most of the sports we have in Uganda is amateur, though it's getting into professional. We've been having a legal regime for regulation of sports since the 60s, but it's only about 4 or 5 years ago that regulations were made under the National Council of Sports Act for the establishment and registration of the different sports bodies and federations. So we have a total of about 40 sports federations or associations, and some of the requirements in there in terms of governance, you must have an assembly, you must have a grassroots, and so on. But what is key is that it's basically voluntarism. You do not have anything specific there on IP, intellectual property. There is no anti-counterfeit policy, for example, for an industry that is driven by merchandising and promotion. You don't have anything there. So it poses a challenge for the sports industry when you are dealing with counterfeits or infringement or fake products. So that's why you see we have a lot of fakes, fake duplicates, fake jerseys, and we have it from bottom to top. So it is a very good topic that the World Intellectual Property Organization has brought up, because I think it's the first time, Mercy, that we are having this kind of discussion. Yes. People need to know that even when it comes to sports, go out there and get a genuine jersey. When you're getting a genuine jersey, it's not just for the sake. You're also helping that beloved sport or that industry. You're helping to raise money for the players and other stakeholders. So it's a very, very important thing, and I'm looking forward to this discussion. I hope we can shed more light on it.
Oh, great indeed. And the focus is on trademarks. So you have the Trademarks Act, Mercy, making sure that you have a registrar who has a register both, I think, which is lying in your docket as URSB. So just help us to understand, just as we're doing an introduction on this, URSB's role in the promotion and making sure that there's a protection of trademarks, especially even regarding the sports industry.
Thank you, Baldwin, and thank you, Alfred, for that discussion. Yes, Uganda joins the rest of the world to celebrate the World Intellectual Property Day on the 26th of this month, April, and every year we have different themes. The theme for last year was Women in Innovation, and now this year is going for gold, intellectual property and sports. And like Fred put it, it's interesting, it's amazing that we are discussing sports. It is an area that has not been given a lot of attention. And how we come in as Uganda Registration Services Bureau, we are the National Intellectual Property Office, and we administer all laws that relate to intellectual property. And so, and intellectual property is so broad. You asked about trademarks. It's one of the components. How do we relate intellectual property to sports? Because when you talk about sports, you talk about the innovations in the area of sports. The innovations, let's say computer applications in the area of sports that need to be protected as copyright. There are, also inventions, new inventions that determine the sports activity. Let's say somebody came up with a sportswear, a sports shoe, which has a technology that shows your activeness on the field. How many steps are you taking? Are you running? Are you moving? I mean, it tells a lot. But there is also the concept of branding. Many of these sponsors, the companies that sponsor, like MTV, MTN and so on, come in to sponsor sports activities. And so where is their visibility? Because they're trying to promote their brand. But also we have the sports personalities that put in the energy, the physical and intellectual energy. Where are they with regard to where do they benefit from with regard to intellectual property, with regard to their image rights? Should you get like a photograph of one of the best players in the country and place it on your product and sell it and use it for commercial purposes, and this person is deep in the village not benefiting? Basically, it's a no-round. There are copyright issues, there are patent issues, there are branding or trademark issues, but there are also design issues which Fred already touched. Many fake products out there. And yet we have original jerseys, we have original sportswear, which have special designs that have been protected under the industrial designs law, because the industrial designs law protects the appearance. Yes. It protects the appearance of an object, protects the fashion and the design of the jersey, where the brand is placed and so on. But when you find many in the marketplace, they are not original, and the owners of these brands, the people who are behind the branding and the the innovations and inventions, do lose out if they do not follow up their rights.
Yeah, and I'll come to one of those particular players, the people who produce such products, and they're really losing heavily. But thanks, Marcel, for that. Fred, so you're dealing with sports and sports-related merchandise, and you are asking, someone will ask themselves, if as an individual I've put forward these particular items, how do I, as maybe a business enterprise or community, how do they make sure that they participate in the protection of these particular trademarks?
Okay, the protection of sports-related trademarks, I would say here, most of the merchandising, most of the apparel we have here is trying to copy or to belong to the family of renowned brands, the Adidas,
the Premiership clubs.
You know, but the Adidas, for example, they make the jerseys, the Under Armour, you know, they make all those garments. The last time I checked, Mercy, I saw that for Ugandan sports entities, I think it's only FUFA that has registered about 10 trademarks around the Uganda Cranes and the national team. The other club is my club that registered this logo, SC Villa. The rest, you don't have a lot of registrations. Yes, you don't have a registration. I have not seen. Now, Masa will tell you that if you're talking about protection, for example, of a trademark, registration is very important to give you those protections under the law. So we have done, at the Anti-Counterfeit Network, we've done some surveys and found that most of the sports merchandising will not be sold in big outlets. You actually have small dealers. Somebody will be selling rice and something, and then they'll also put Uganda Cranes jersey there, or other garments or other clothes. I know we have the Adidas shop on Kampala Road, but I think that's the only one, maybe 2 or 3. But the majority of the products in there, that retailer, that wholesaler, that distributor is not the owner of the trademark. And my understanding on enforcement of trademarks is that usually the distributor or this retailer is not given rights to pursue infringement and all these other issues. So you get a challenge that if there's an infringement of a popular sports brand, international brand, you'll have to rely on the headquarters in London or wherever to come and enforce, because a trademark cannot just be enforced by somebody because he likes the jersey, the Man U jersey, and so on. So we have a challenge there.
If I'm a retail merchandiser, I cannot be able to pursue maybe legal enforcement for the protection of those products. That
most of the time, it is retained by the brand owner. The trademark owner retains the rights. And even when you would like to go and pursue a trademark infringement case, you need authorization. You need a power of attorney from the owner. Now, because this is a small market, the challenge that we have always found is that these big brands, they will not support very well an action to pursue somebody with 2 pieces, or they will even ask, what is the consignment? Is it how many containers? If they're going to get 10 containers in UAE and a small bag in Uganda, are they likely to pursue Uganda? So they don't. So in the end, the fakes, the counterfeits, thrive. So I can tell you here that most of the sports merchandising on the market is fake. 70–80% is fake.
All right, quite an intricate matter. So when we come back, I just need you, Mercy, to help us in understanding the process of registration for trademarks. Because how do you engage, especially for locally done or produced merchandise, and the clubs, if you're talking about KCCA and then other clubs are not registered. What is the implication and the risk about that? Our viewers, please, let's go for a break and we'll come back just right after this and continue to the discussion. Happy Easter, our viewers, and thanks for keeping us as your number one station. I'm Karagaba Baldwins, and we feel strongly that on this Easter Saturday weekend, we need to discuss something of this importance about intellectual property rights. People are losing a lot of money in the investment they're making in business, especially now in the sports sector. And I have two prominent intellectual property lawyers, and of course they're legal experts in other areas, and they're helping to answer these questions. Mercy. So, just as we are trying to fight over this whole problem that counterfeits are prominently flourishing because the market is not properly regulated, people are not registered, and they don't have their trademarks registered with you as URSB. So if somebody now makes a decision and they want to register their either company or their products, what is the procedure? And perhaps slightly the cost.
Thank you. The registration takes different forms. First of all, you have to exist as a legal entity. If it's a sports club, it can register under different laws. And for example, it may register as a company under the Companies Act. And the Companies Act also has different categories of companies. Are you non-profit making? Are you a public company? Are you a private company? It depends. And so that is the first registration to give you that legal existence. And any registered company, any artificial person, which is a company, can own a trademark or any intellectual property asset. And a trademark in this case is any symbol, any sign, any graphical representation of any word, as long as it distinguishes your goods from that of another or your services from that of another. And in the case of sports, we have so many brand names. We have Adidas, as already mentioned by Fred. We have Nike. We have, those are the most common in terms of sports, but we also have many others. And so it is up to the owners of these companies or the brands.
Have any brand is registered?
Of course, yes. No. Most of they are registered.
Any Ugandan fabric that is registered?
Yes, we have different. FUFA has registered different designs. We have Makerere University, which registered not a sports but it's gown. So those are industrial designs that are registered. Fashion is protected. The design of any object or any attire. And so I may not have a record of everything that is registered here. So, but what I'm trying to say is that any person who claims to own that brand is free to register under the trademarks law. And for this trademark, for you to register, you must, of course, be the owner of that brand. So you dealing in those sports apparel, running, merchandising, does not entitle you to register or give you ownership. So it is the owners, the original owners, that have to register. They can give you a license, like a registered user license, or authority to go ahead and deal in that product, but still you don't have to get authorization to import those products into the country. It's a case by case. And so once an entity chooses to register in Uganda, you have to make an application for a search, first of all, and we search it within our database on whether the trademark is registrable, whether it qualifies to be registered, whether it is confusingly similar to what we already have on the register, whether it's against public code and morality, whether it's descriptive, it describes the goods, whether it is distinctive. There's a criteria of examination that we take it through as registrars. But
that's
you can also
the search fees, costing 25,000, application fees 50,000.
Yeah, that is for a local. If the owner of that brand is a Ugandan, and a Ugandan,
yeah,
the fees
a
foreign entity, such as $65, then $150 for application, then a publication in the Gazette is about 350,000 Uganda shillings. Then 60 days after the publication, and if there's no objection, you can apply for registration, which is $250 for a foreigner, but for a Ugandan is 100. So the fees differ depending on the applicant. Is the applicant a Ugandan? Is it a Ugandan company or a Ugandan person?
Okay. And you feel that those fees are not inhibitive?
No, they're okay. When you compare, they're affordable for sure.
All right.
Because you know, most of these trademarks that are registered are for business.
Billionaires.
They are for business. So that is not a lot of money.
All right. Thanks, Marcel. So Fred, argument of counterfeits chasing away investors from Uganda. You know, there's in April 2018, the gentleman who heads the private sector foundation, I think we well know, Badagawa said that there was a lack of law for protecting investors from counterfeits, and is chasing away serious investors. Of course, because the proposed counterfeiting goods bill 2015 was withdrawn from Parliament, and with the argument that there are other laws that are filling up the gaps. But even if you had this law and with this whole endeavor, do you think it's practical with this whole messed up system of ours that you have goods imported and the people who own those particular intellectual properties can't defend them, that even here people are not cognizant of the fact that they need to register their own intellectual property? So
if the question is...
So is this relevant fight? Is this a winnable fight?
Okay, for the viewers out there, it's intellectual property that has brought this show to you. This is called TV broadcast copyright. This whole program, programming and the feed you're getting, and when you switch on your TV, this is part of intellectual property. Without
any other TV station cannot claim this.
Yes, so without protection, you cannot have the broadcast which people would view. Now, going back to the topic, which is sports. Sports in Uganda benefits a lot from intellectual property. We all love the Premier League, the La Liga. How do we get it? We get it through the intellectual property rights that are channeled through the production, the production of the game, from the stadia, the feed, the filming, and the broadcast rights that are sold to Sky and all these guys. That's how we're able to view it. So anybody who is a sports lover must know that without intellectual property, you can't enjoy your game. But also, leave aside the Premier League and these foreign things. The Ugandan national team for football is the most popular team. We have 40 million Ugandans. Let me assume just 4 million support the Uganda Cranes, but I know there are more. Okay?
True.
And we think that if intellectual property, if the rights to, for example, the jerseys, the Uganda Cranes jerseys, were managed well, if FUFA knew what property it had and it came up with a plan to promote this jersey and just sell it to 4 million Ugandans. Each jersey is produced from China. Landed cost here is about 15,000 shillings. A jersey, a duplicate jersey would go for between 20, 25,000. A genuine one will go for 50 and above. Even if you are to make a markup of 5,000 shillings that you give to the federation to support the national team, the national team spends every year on average 6 to 7 billion. That's the budget. Do you know that the jerseys alone and all these regalia and the trumpets and so on can finance the national team, so that we do not have situations of going to State House to beg? National team has no allowances. The coach is demanding. We had the coach Mitchell here left demanding $50,000. This money can actually be raised through exploitation of the intellectual property around the national team. But instead, what do we have? We have 80% of the jerseys that are being sold out there, they are fake, meaning there is no direct income that is coming into the federation, into the game. It's not benefiting that player that you love to watch. So in effect, because we have not protected our intellectual property, we have denied the games that we love, the basketball, the football, we've denied it resources. So if you're Ugandan out there and you love your team, make sure you buy a genuine jersey. But also they appeal to the federations, the sports federations. Can you please have a proper structure? Today, if you ask somebody, where do I get a genuine jersey? Do we know who the distributors are? Do you know how, can you differentiate between a fake and genuine jersey? They all look the same. That's why for us at the Anti-Counterfeit Network, we've put up the fakes desk, which is supposed to be a go-to place for consumers, for ordinary people, to be able to report. First of all, we don't have data. Masa will tell you, it's very difficult to get data in respect of fakes. Do we know how much fake sold there is? Do we know how many fake jerseys of Man U are? We don't have this information. It's not easy. It's a very expensive exercise.
Yeah,
but
and I think that's where the argument against your campaign, your advocacy, it defeats the whole thing. That makes it impossible, because you have such an informalized industrial system. The market is so infiltrated by other players that, and then you don't have the law, because the
law is there. And I wanted to comment on the law, because we participated in moving parliament to make changes.
So the Counterfeits good bill.
It was withdrawn at our prompting, okay, because we analyzed it and found that it was contradicting the existing regime under the Trademarks Act. For example, the definition of infringement or counterfeit was contradicting the Trademarks Act. So our suggestion to Parliament was, can we get the good things from the bill, which were the heightened punishments and the sanctions and those good things, put them in under the Trademarks Act, which Massey superintends over. You see, the bill was saying things like the powers of the commissioner, customs to seize and so on, they're taken away. We give them to police. Police will, for example, handle the operation and store the seized goods. Police doesn't have houses for its officers. Where will it get a house to store the fake goods? So it had challenges. But the point here is that we need to start from somewhere. Even if there are challenges in differentiating, even if there are challenges in finding the data, can we start from somewhere, which is help the consumer? Because when you're fighting counterfeit, the front line actually is the consumer. Because today, if Baldwins knew that this is genuine, and it is important that I get the genuine, by the way, people should understand, when we are fighting fake merchandising in sports, it's not for the sake of it. You might think, but this doesn't affect me. The latest bombings in France, the investigation reveals that the financing for those bombings in France was done through the sale of fake Puma products. You understand? So when you give your money to a counterfeiter, he is most likely sending that money for an illicit purpose, which will also include terrorism as well. A counterfeiter doesn't set up Mukwano Industries. A counterfeiter goes into such things, sells the fakes, raises money, and then harms you.
Okay, so you feel that it's possible actually to win this fight of the counterfeit?
Yes,
so
I could also
supplement
on that.
Just as you're coming in, so there's just exactly what we were saying. FIFA itself was making this case and complaining in January, saying that first of all, they issued out guidelines on the distribution and selling of the Uganda Cranes jerseys, and I think probably involved. Then noted with concern that there was infringement on its registered patented logos, commercial products, And then he said FUFA has an understanding with Mafro. They saw manufacturers, I think what you're trying to get to tell through your submission. So when you have this particular environment, the enforcement issue is what the problem is, really. How possible, besides talking about it and besides advocating, what is the enforcement system here?
Okay, thank you for that question. The law is there. It's just that that anti-counterfeit goods bill was meant to be a standalone to emphasize the challenge of counterfeiting. We have just one provision in the trademarks law that is against counterfeiting. And like Fred said, we just needed to expound on it to define what counterfeit is, how do we take it on from there, rather than having just one provision in the law. Then coming back to enforcement. Enforcement is a role of all of us. Of course, the main player is government. There's the private party, that is the owner of the brand, whose duty is to alert government that my goods are being faked and there must be action. But there's also the consumer who consumes that good and is affected by it or has reasonable suspicion that this is a fake, so they can report or alert the owner. And so what we do, we have different players in the enforcement of copyright. Generally, we have the owner, we have the government, Uganda Registration Services Bureau, that administers the IP laws. We have police, by virtue of the constitutional mandate. They are supposed to protect property and persons. Intellectual property is part of the property. We have the courts of judicature, which handle these decisions. We have organizations that come in to support, like the Anti-Counterfeiting Network. We have the collective management societies that represent the rights of the whole owners of these rights collectively. We have the lawyers, the law society that gives advisory services to the aggrieved parties. We have different ministries. So you see, the whole chain of key players in the enforcement is so big.
Yeah,
and we just need to
that's what makes it quite impossible, because you see, if for registration you specifically notify and communicate that it's URSB which is supposed to do the registration. When it comes to enforcement, there's too much ambiguity, there's too much spread. So for instance, if my property, my trademark has been infringed upon, how do I get to report this? And
when your trademark is infringed upon, the first step to do is to report to the authorities, and this is Uganda Police or Uganda Registration Services Bureau, because Uganda Registration Services Bureau has an enforcement unit that has trained a number of police, men and women, that run it with all of us, the technical officers. So when your goods are faked, when your goods are infringed upon, the first step is to complain to URSB or Uganda Police, any police near you, because we work with our police. Our intellectual property enforcement unit works with all police in Uganda and outside Uganda. And what we do is we move into investigations to find out whether it is a counterfeit. We engage the owner, they bring the samples. We do investigations, and from the investigative reports and the technical reports on infringement, we take the next action. When we find that there's reasonable evidence that these goods have been infringed upon, some have even bases where these goods are being printed out or assembled, in our enforcement team goes and seizes most of these infringing products. The next take is we forward the file to the DPP, because it's a criminal matter. We work with the DPP to take a decision, but the beauty is that the Directorate of Public Prosecutions has also designated some of our lawyers at Uganda Registration Services Bureau to be prosecutors for purposes of enforcement. So the process is easier. And then we take the matter on to court.
Yes. Okay, so somebody can approach URSB.
Yes. And ever since
which is more recommended, to approach URSB or Uganda Police?
The Uganda Police, I mean Uganda Registration Services Bureau has, I'll speak for my, yes. UNBS is for purposes of standards. So far, since we started the enforcement unit in 2017, we currently have round about 80 cases of infringing, relating to enforcement of copyright and trademarks and so on. People even make copies of books, piracy issues, and so on. So we see their results. We see their results, and the public continues to engage us. And so when you report to us, we work with police in any jurisdiction to help us do the seizures, the investigations. We are working so well, and we'll continue to train police in appreciating what intellectual property is and the role of enforcement.
All right, thanks. Thanks, Mercy. Fred, let me go for a short break. When we come back, we talk about still the practicality of fighting this whole vice across borders, the porous nature of the borders, and the lack of unanimity of law establishment in the East African community. Then we see how we wrap it up on that.
Thank you.
Thanks, our viewers. Let's go for a short break, and we'll be right back to wind up this discussion. Thanks our viewers for keeping with us. We are discussing issues regarding intellectual property, and particularly the trademarks issues in the sports industry. And thanks for being with us here at NTV on this pretty nice Easter weekend. And I have a team, just again, of great intellectual property lawyers. So Fred, you still in the struggle to understand how the enforcement of this whole fight, or perhaps realizing the success of this fight, the East African community, and because there was a draft policy on anti-counterfeiting, anti-piracy, and other intellectual property rights violations, which were stating objectives and stuff, but nothing has concretely been substantiated and put into law as a unanimous East African community law pact. And you have porous borders. You have the common market arrangement. How is this going to work to make sure that you reduce the problem?
Okay, for me, as a non-state actor, civil society, I would say that I think Uganda, we are lagging behind a bit. I know Mercy here and team, they are trying, but I mean, she will tell you how many registrars do we have for the whole country to handle this issue. I don't know if you have 10. How many inspectors do we have? I have done work with URSB, some operations, and many times you have to get reinforcement of police to support. Is Mercy and team getting the adequate budget that they need So there are challenges there. You'll never have sufficient resources, okay? But our appeal as consumers, as members of the public is, this is a very important subject. Can government put more money in institutions like this? The police, what happens to the economic crimes department of the Uganda police? How many people are there? Do they have equipment? Do they even understand the subject? We went for an operation with some police officers sometime, and you'll be shocked. The police officers who we took to grab the fakes, they kept admiring and saying, but this is okay, because they didn't appreciate. So now that leads me to the other issue. You know, there are many ways of fighting counterfeits. What Mercy has been talking about, rightly, is the enforcement aspect. Okay, where you go, grab the person, lock up. But why is it that we do enforcement, and the incident just keeps increasing? You close the shop here today, it opens up in another place. Until you resolve the issue of the consumer, until the consumer understands that this is wrong, they will not provide a market. But if they don't understand, when you arrest Baldwin, tomorrow they will say, you know, Bamuteka, you know how they reason. And then but at the East African level, Uganda is lagging a bit behind. Why? In Kenya, for example, we have a cooperation agreement with the Anti-Counterfeit Agency. They have a dedicated body that is dealing with the specific issue of counterfeits. In Uganda, we don't have. Part of the problems, Masa will tell you why the Anti-Counterfeit Goods Bill could not pass. There were issues on mandate. Do we give it to URSB? Do we give it to UNBS? Do we give it to police? There was confusion there. And the idea would have been, can we have a dedicated body? So Tanzania has the Fair Competitions Commission. Is it a commission or whatever, which deals with these issues? You can go and report there. So for me, I feel that we need to work, yes, on legislation. We are trying to push, for example, ACN is trying to push Parliament to see that those changes or improvements on the Trademarks Act are done quickly. Because, listen, this is not a joking subject. Baldwin, I know you're saying, oh, can we succeed and so on. But this is about your survival. Because counterfeits are in the syrups you give your children. They are fakes in the food that you're eating, the meat you're eating. It's not just about sports. So construction, everything is fake. So, and the reason we are falling sick, you look at the records. Last year, 22,000 Ugandans died of cancer. 22,000. That was an upsurge of about 30–40% of a period of 10 years. The numbers are going to grow. You go to Cancer Institute now, there are small babies struggling for their life. Why is it that small babies are falling sick? Cancer used to be something for the old people and so on. All this is because of fakes. And by the way, even the garments, there's no time to talk about that. There's a lot of danger in that fake garment. Don't think it's a simple, ordinary, low-quality thing. It has a lot of dangerous chemicals that seep into your skin and so on. That is for another day. We can discuss it. So I think part of the problem is that issues are complicated, that we do not have enough legislative support. For example, we don't have a consumer protection law in Uganda. We have the East African Consumer Protection, but for Uganda, we don't have. We don't have a competition law. All these are things that are supposed to help improve the quality of products and business that we do in the country. So there are big challenges. As East Africa will lose about $2 billion in revenue, in taxes. A counterfeiter is not a model employer. A counterfeiter doesn't pay taxes. He's always doing, you know, he's not like NTV here who is, you know, legit, paying taxes and employing people and giving them a livelihood. A counterfeiter doesn't set up this studio. You know, he will do the piracy and copy and do a feed quietly. He will not have an address like this. So it's not a fight we can afford to abandon. It is very difficult, however. Yeah, we can't abandon it because, and like Mercy has said, there is the consumer. For me, I think the consumer is the biggest stakeholder. Because Baldwins, when you fall sick, when you get an issue because of fake breaks and somebody perishes, it's not URSB that perishes or UNBS or the government. It is you.
Yeah, but of course there can be a counter-argument against that, that if government has an interest in an area to ensure that it fights a certain problem, that it will actually do so. So there is an interpretation on the side of the public that there is no political way to do that. But we can't, because that's politics. So on the cost which you're talking about, Mercy, of this whole IP infringement, and there's somebody who wrote about it. I studied European chief economists, and who says that it is estimated that the legitimate industry loses approximately 500 million pounds. That is, of course, in Europe itself. And so you're throwing this to the consumers, okay? So how are you going to make sure that you can do that campaign successfully to convert the public, which is more aligned, rather likely to go and buy cheaper things which are fake because of the economic status that they're in? They're not choosing.
But Rodwin, what is cheap? I'm sorry for interjecting.
In terms of price cheapness.
When you buy something cheap and it causes you harm,
yes,
and maybe even your life.
Price is at the forefront. Price-sensitive communities, markets. That's just a dilemma psychologically, that someone takes a first choice for something that has a price.
It's because they don't know the dangers.
Okay, so how are you driving that company?
Well, there are different approaches to that in the efforts that have been put towards promoting consumption of original products, and it all comes back to consumer attitudes. It is clear that sometimes when people know that this is a fake, they look at the pricing and affordability. So in fact, there are arguments and schools of thoughts where they say you are fighting counterfeit, but the consumer feels they can afford, but you cannot support an illegality. It is illegal. And in any case, even if the consumer feels they want to do it, some do it out of ignorance because of the pricing. They don't know that this is a fake, and you can easily tell what a fake is. And like Fred mentioned, we have to look at the life-threatening effects of these counterfeit products. You leave alone these simple issues that you can buy a carpet or a glass and survive, but look at electronicals, cables, this fake cabling. They have burnt houses.
Yeah,
look at the fake cement.
Brings a brand, Panasonic, and actually they convert Panasonic to Panasonic, and so you
that is confusing. They're confusing the consumer. Yes. So the consumer has to be alert. The consumer of the 21st century has to be sharp, has to be alert, has to be knowledgeable. They must know the source of their product. They must know what they're getting into. They must know even the places to go to for genuine products. You'd rather buy one item that is expensive and it will save your life than buying so many that will kill you in the shortest run. The spare parts that are on the roads, that are in our cars. You know, Uganda's.
Of course, I struggled with shock absorbers.
Yes.
Moved around.
You buy
this,
it's fake. This
and
is
I
fake.
spent almost more money than getting the original.
Then the pharmaceutical products, I was already emphasized by Fred. How do you put fake products in form of medicine in a pharmacy or a health center? These people are murderers. The counterfeiters are murderers.
But some will say government is not watching.
No, the government is what. The government just, we are government. Yes. You and me are government.
The ones who pay taxes are government. You see,
well,
the real
sometimes in most governments, there are priorities, but I know that within the existing legislative framework, I'm a government official, I'm a public servant. I know we have tried, I'm speaking from where we sit, we have tried all efforts to sensitize people, and it's a continuous process. And it's not only Uganda, it's a global issue. Counterfeiting is a global issue. You go online and see what is in China, even in all these developed countries, you find they still grapple with the challenge. So we need to sensitize the consumer of today. And how we can actually address it so well is we are trying to run campaigns as Uganda Registration Services and other support agencies towards the young people in schools. I want to run campaigns in universities so that these people should know that we want a generation that should reject and resist fakes. If something is a fake, refuse it. And when these counterfeiters or pirates see that their goods are not being consumed, they will somehow get out of that market. So it starts, at the end of the day, it starts with me, the consumer. But we need to create and build a generation that is against fakes, that will stop consuming fakes. If it is fake, we have to eliminate it.
Yeah, so you're talking to the people, you're talking to the public.
Yes, the public. Those are targeted campaigns.
Oh, okay.
It's and so we encourage everybody who has anything, any solution to this to come on board, and we fight collectively. Otherwise, this force, the counterfeiting force, and the pirates are so strong. They have the money, they have the networks. They are so loaded that if we don't tackle it collectively, we will not manage them.
Yeah. Okay, thanks. It's a bit a spread of hope-giving, and I think thanks, Marcin. Let's wind it up with Fred, because our time is fast spent. 2 minutes. What is the hope in all this? Do we have a future that we can be able actually to successfully deal with this? Because you have the anti-counterfeit contraband operations that is usually also conducted by UNBS, and they go into people's arcades, they go into shops, they grab stuff. Of course, just as you said, if you grab stuff from this particular shop, the other one next time is going to pop up somewhere else. So what is the optimism here? And what do you see?
I think the optimism, I have done anti-counterfeit practice for about 15 years now. I have done all those operations for so many brands. I got tired because you go today, tomorrow it comes up. The biggest thing that for us we have found is education of the market, the consumer. And what we are working on now, and we would invite Marcel to join and support this, we would like the consumer to be enabled, to be facilitated to differentiate between a genuine and a fake. We are putting up a program where brand owners, trademark owners should come out and train us to tell us that the genuine looks like this, these are the specifications, it has a hologram, it has this, because we are pushing the thing to the consumers, but when they go in the market, they do not know how to differentiate. When HP or whoever does a billboard, every time you advertise a genuine product, you are also advertising the fake because they look the same. You understand? So can we come up with a policy and say, NTV, the way you do product promotion must always include a component of telling us how to identify your genuine product. It's not enough for you to just throw an advert there and say new Omo, new this. Because when you do it, the fake guy will also do the same packaging, the trade dress will be the same, and I'll go and get hurt. There are a lot of detergents that are hurting people, you know, out there. So, the thing is, Baldwins, I know you're saying, yeah, it's government and so on. My friend, it is you first and foremost. Why don't you, as a consumer, demand from your popular brands to know where to buy the genuine, to know the specs of the genuine product? Why don't you demand? If we come out, and that's what SCN is doing, we're working with several brands. We have many young people who are being trained by these various brands. It has never happened anywhere. And they're being told, this is how you identify and so on. And very soon we shall have an online and physical desk where you can report. Because she says here rightly that, yes, you can report to URSB, you can report to police. But how many points in the market will you find URSB or the police?
Yeah, true.
Many times you'll go to the police with an issue. Can you go to the police and say, but this bottle of water was... They will say, but that's not a case. We are dealing with bigger cases because they don't appreciate. So I think we need a more concerted effort from the public. And remember, even those who manufacture fakes are consumers. When you manufacture fake tires, you don't manufacture the curry powder you use. You also need a genuine thing. There is nobody, Baldwins, who you will tell that this is cheaper, 1,000 shillings, but it can harm your liver. This is genuine, 10,000, you'll be okay. Nobody will buy this if they knew that it's dangerous. So the most important thing is, can we disseminate information using these platforms? Instead of NTV talking here about miscurvy and so on, can we talk about the things that affect the economy? We are losing money, we are losing jobs, we have unemployment, we have fake everywhere in the religions, in the politics, in everything. It's fake. And it's
Even
a
politics.
national disaster.
Yeah, true. And on that note, really emphatic and very passionate. It's a very tough area to deal with. But yeah, I think the conversation goes on, especially online, and we will bring back this very conversation. It's an Easter weekend, and definitely people need to talk to themselves and understand the depth of this problem.
And make sure actually, they procure the...
actually they are not going... what I've understood just last in a second is that people are not buying fakes genuinely because of price depreciation, but because of ignorance.
No, that's one of them. There are
Okay.
those who look out for fakes. During Easter, are you going out there and you're buying fake, you're giving money to the wrong guys, you're losing employment because it is wrong. There are no benefits for counterfeits.
All right. Fred Muwema, Director, Legal and Corporate Affairs and Corruption Network. And Counterfeit Network. Sorry, I keep on making a mistake on that. And the Director of Intellectual Property, URSB, Kainobwisho. Very grateful to have you here. I can feel the buzz and the passion to make sure that we have the extension of this discussion.
Perspectives, we talk for 3 hours.
Yes.
This is a big subject.
Yes.
Thank you so much, guys. Thank you, our viewers, for keeping with us, and we wish you a very lovely Easter weekend. I'm Karagaba Baldwins, and have a blessed, wonderful weekend. Keep watching NTV.